Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. I'm really excited for my next guest. His name is Jose Berlanga. He's a serial entrepreneur who has achieved 9-figure income as a builder and a real estate investor focused on bringing new life to neglected Houston neighborhoods. He's done a lot more than that. I was reading his bio and I was just blown away by the amount of different experiences and ventures he's been in. But his real passion, the things that really gets his juices flowing, is dirt, bare, undeveloped land. So he wants people to understand the opportunities in real estate investing, including land. His first book is called The Business of Home Building. And his second book that's coming out here in October 2025, for anybody who's listening in the future, is called Dirt Rich: Explore the World of Land Investing and Development. Jose, thank you so much for being with me. I really appreciate it. We had a chance at the beginning here just to touch base and, exchange a few words, but thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Benson. It is wonderful to be here.
Oh yeah. I'm so excited to learn more about some of the things you're doing, but we could really do like a podcast series with the amount of stuff that you've been involved with. But originally you're from Mexico City. So you immigrated to the US in the mid 80s. And you settled in Houston, and you came here to go to the University of St. Thomas. That's in Houston, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was it that made you want to come study in the US? And secondly, was doing business and staying in the US part of the plan from the very beginning?
Yeah, my transition was relatively smooth. My father was in the oil and gas business, in the valve and piping. Houston was always our second home, as far as I can remember. And Houston was my dream town. It's grown ridiculously since I arrived 40 years ago. It's no longer the same feel, the same environment. I mean, it felt... And if you can imagine coming from the biggest city in the world at the time, Mexico City, which had 25 million people or so, coming to Houston, I used to love it. It's almost like I would go back in time. Life would slow down. As a kid, I could ride my bike on the streets. Not that I didn't do it in Mexico, but it was a lot riskier. I even had a motorcycle in Mexico City, if you can believe. At the age of 9 or 10 years old, I was one of those crazy kids that at a very young age was already doing all kinds of grown-up stuff. But Houston was always my second home, and I loved being here all the time. So I couldn't wait for one day. Not to mention the sea level, the humidity that I enjoyed. I always associated it with a vacation, with vacation time. And when the time was right, and I was able to go to college, this was, I didn't even consider any other city. I didn't consider any other universities. This is where I wanted to go.
Yeah, I mean, and you're in control of your destiny, right? And that's one of the benefits of operating in a country like the US. And I don't know much about what it's like to go to a university in Mexico or even another country, but I feel like you might have a little bit more control over it here and what you're going to do in business and entrepreneur ventures. Has that been your experience?
Yes, of course. This whether people, many believe it or not, this is the land of opportunity. There are endless alternatives and ways to do magnificent things in this country. There are certainly opportunities in many other countries. I wanted to work here. I wanted to own a business here. I knew that I could do it in either place. As a matter of fact, throughout the years in my earlier stages of my career, I did a lot of business with Mexico and Latin America. I felt that I had an edge. I spoke both languages. I speak Spanish better than I speak English. I'm more articulate. It is my first language. I grew up there. I felt like I understood both cultures, mentalities. I knew how people work down there in Mexico and Central and Latin America. And the fact that my father had contacts, had been in that industry, I immediately started working in something very similar. And being in the United States allowed me to be of service to those living in other countries south of the border, because back then in the 80s, we didn't have what we have today. We didn't have the internet, we didn't have technology, we didn't have information. There were no ways for all of these factories and plants and petrochemical facilities to service their equipment, and the engineers didn't speak English, so there were a lot of opportunities for bilingual, let's call it either entrepreneurs or executives in many different fields. I'll wrap it up by saying I was always humble enough to know that I was not a specialist in any area or in any country. I came here to try to understand how business function, how to start an entity, how to build your credit, how to build relationships, and the same over there. And little by little, I built a business and another one and another one. But the point is, I began by trying to understand the rules, because they are different in every country. Regardless of whether there are opportunities or not, you have to understand how to play the game. The cultural, the sociological aspects of every region, even within the US. A lot of what I talk about is I've had the opportunity of doing business in different parts of the country. And there are different mentalities, different styles, negotiating styles, and personalities. And part of being an entrepreneur is having the ability and the willingness to learn, and to be humble in the process of understanding the business environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always felt that, those business people who can pivot quickly, be a bit of a chameleon amongst anybody they're with, to operate on their level, right? You just go to where people are at, right? You've heard that term before. I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
such an amazing skill to be able to do that, but that comes with experience, right? So if you're brand new, you maybe wouldn't have that ability to fit in with any sort of group, and just, you know, make them, want to get to know you, trust you, like you, and then eventually do business with you. I think it's quite a skill. Um,
Yeah.
of the skills that you've acquired over the years, is there one that sticks out for you in your mind that helped you kind of elevate yourself and level up to the next venture, and these nine-figure revenues that you've been talking about?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned one of the important ones: people skills, having the ability to build relationships.
Hmm.
Uh, many areas of my life had gone the reverse way. You mentioned that first you gain the experience in a sector or in an industry, and you build your confidence. I never felt that I was a specialist in anything. I studied economics and business administration, but I was not one of those entrepreneurs that had immediate clarity as to what I wanted to do, what I wanted to sell, what I wanted to build. Some people know it from the get-go, the type of product or industry or profession. I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, I want to be an attorney. I didn't have that. And it took me a long time. All I knew is that I understood how to get along. I understood how to build relationships, how to look for opportunities, how to be accountable, how to be responsible. And people knew me as the hardworking guy, the reliable guy. And before you know it, you know enough people to start doing deals and start doing companies at a young age. before you get flooded with financial responsibilities. And so that my perhaps skill was more social
Mm.
and in reliability, accountability. I was known as that guy who will be there. If he says he's going to be there at certain time, and he says he's going to do what he said he's going to, you can count on it. And it built a business personality that helped me over the years.
Yeah. How much do you attribute that to your upbringing in the family environment? And there's always like this discussion of nature versus nurture. And I think some people are just better equipped with the ability to have this relationship building skill. And it's just in them. And I think some people can learn it, but I think some people are just better than others. Tell me about your experience. How was your upbringing with your family? You said your father was a business person. He must have spent a lot of time in the U.S. and maybe you didn't see him as often. I'm guessing, but what was that
Yeah,
like?
yeah. He traveled a lot.
Yeah.
We had a great relationship, and when I saw him, it was amazing. But yes, he moved around quite a bit. It was rare when we could spend quality time, particularly in my younger years. As I grew older, then we had the opportunity to spend a lot of time together. Um, but I another interesting thing about me that I think characterized my profession, I love to observe others, particularly successful people.
Hmm.
I had an admiration that is rare. Most of us want to learn via books, via classes, lessons, recommendations, advice. I didn't need any of that. I just love to pay attention to who was doing what and how were they doing it.
Mm.
What was their process? What were their schedules? Their personality, their methodology, their discipline. And my father was certainly one of those great mentors in my life. He taught me discipline, order, systems, responsibility, many of the fundamentals that business represents. And I had another blessing that I had uh, the eye to pay attention for what people were doing right and what they were doing wrong at an early age. I I I saw so many entrepreneurs make fatal mistakes, and those helped me. Those helped me because I always had that major concern slash phobia of failing. So I would pay attention to the people around me and how they ran their businesses. And in my upbringing was very important. I followed certain disciplines, but I also learned a lot of what not only my father but some of his business associates were doing right and wrong. I saw the ones who continuously succeeded, and some of those who were just wheelers and dealers and perhaps had a moment of luck, but they didn't have the discipline, they didn't have the consistency. And I always understood that it was going to take a long time to succeed. That's something that I think I understood, that it was going to be difficult because that's what I saw growing up in Mexico. Everybody would struggle, work very, very hard, long hours in order to achieve anything.
Hmm.
So when you come to places like this where there are not many people who are willing to put the long hours and the sacrifice in order to get somewhere.
Was there anybody that you can remember that was somebody that you put up on a pedestal that you really modeled yourself after?
No, not one, not one.
Hmm.
I cherry picked certain activities. I had a few partners more than anything. Imagine that more than mentors, I had great partners older than me that were great at putting deals together, and I learned different things from different personalities. I learned, for example, people. I had a partner who was great building things with very little effort, with a lot of leverage, taking a lot of risks. I had another partner who was very creative. He knew how to create value out of thin air and come up with concepts that were amazing, where we, started a couple of companies in different industries. I had another partner that was very conservative, very methodic, very numbers oriented. And all of those relationships, if you pay attention, you get something, you learn something. If you don't battle them, if you don't negotiate too much with them and try to observe and pay attention, one of the lessons that I learned throughout those years and throughout those learning experiences through collaboration with partners was that we needed each other. Not very few people in the business world have all of the ingredients, the necessary skills to turn a business into a major success. Some of us have, the patience to sit behind the desk and run the administrative. Some others have the ability to go and close a deal. Some others have the creativity to build an infrastructure. And when you partner the right skills, the right set of skills, the right team, and assuming that you find those team members that you trust, that you have certain affinity with, that you get along, that you understand and agree with your mission, you can build great businesses. So my mentors, in a way, I think were mutual. As some people were learning some of my philosophies, I was learning some of my partners' philosophies. And I'm one of those old souls that normally, I don't know why, but I normally attracted older friends, older partners that saw something in me. I also often admit I'm a very humble, realistic entrepreneur. I'm not one of those guys who would just come up with things and start them out of thin air. I was always part of an equation where someone would have an idea and he would know the person that could get us in touch with this, but I knew the other part of the business, or somewhere along the lines we could put a business together. But I was not the type of personality, and this is always something important that I tell entrepreneurs: you don't have to have necessarily a clear idea of what you want to sell, what you want to produce, what you want to distribute, a product or a service. You just have to be looking for it. Have your eyes and ears open, build relationships, understand what you're good at, and that skill will help and contribute to complete the part of the equation that maybe somebody else wants. How many times we see huge, multi-billion-dollar enterprises, companies where somebody came up with the idea, but they didn't know how to monetize it. They didn't know how to take it to market, and vice versa. Somebody had the contacts and the financing and the funds or the means to get to those funds, but they didn't have the product. So you have to know that sometimes it takes certain stars aligning in the right position, and always paying attention and knowing what it is that you're going to contribute with. Because and the last point is, nothing comes for free. You're not going, nobody's going to give you an opportunity just because you're a cool guy or girl or you're fun to hang out with. You have to have something of value, something to contribute, something that people can benefit from in order to make a business happen. So, and you have to identify what that is.
Yeah, it's so true. I was at a real estate convention this last weekend and was talking with a girl who was trying to figure out how to get her foot in the door and do real estate. And, I said, you just take a personal inventory of what you think you can bring to the table, right? What do you have that you can bring? What's your skin in the game? And it turned out that she had money, but she didn't have any experience. She didn't have time, and she didn't have some of the other things that she thought she needed. So she could be like the money person. And so like a JV opportunity would be like the best thing for her to kind of start off, I thought. And, interestingly enough, you're talking about partnerships. One of your, I think, most important powerhouse partnerships that you had was with your brother.
Yeah,
And
the
in
biggest. Yeah,
and in this
that's
case
important.
here, he was good at design, right? And you were the strategist, right? So
Yeah.
you guys, came together and created a whole, but you both brought something different to the table. What was that venture that you guys worked on together?
It was fantastic and complex in so many ways. I'm going to put something in perspective that I rarely say, but I'm not embarrassed to, is that I've been building homes for close to 30 years, 25 plus years, but I don't know how to build a home, and I don't care. I have no interest.
Right.
I've built thousands of homes. I've put billions of dollars together for this industry, and I do not know how to build a home, nor I care. That is how I articulate entrepreneurship. I know the fundamentals, okay? I can guide people to do it, but I don't need to. I can own a car factory. I don't need to know how to build a car. I need to know that I understand the process and that I have the right team. And when you have a team that you trust, things work. In this case, to answer the question, my brother and I had full trust in each other. He knew his part, I knew mine. I never needed to understand his in depth. At some point, there was a lot of overlapping in our activities, but the company began with two basic areas: operations and finance. Construction and design, and financing and numbers and budgets and so on and so forth. Obviously, those began to trickle down into many departments and into an infrastructure that became much more sophisticated. But when you have a partnership of respect, of care, of understanding, which was ours, and we knew that we could rely on each other, you can multiply very quickly. It is truly like a marriage. If there is no trust, if there's no affinity, no understanding of where you're headed. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you what our biggest setback, obstacle, uh, the reason why we didn't turn this into a $1 billion company, although we did billions of dollars in transactions, but that we didn't grow at a national scale, is because my brother, and I've never said this, I've never verbalized it in this way. He was too worried about what I wanted, and I was too worried about what he wanted.
Hmm.
That is the level of care and love and understanding, compromise. I wanted to build a machine. He wanted to design and enjoy the process of building. So we met somewhere in the middle, and we built unimaginable things in relation to having similar values but different natures and different objectives. We understood that we had a similar mission, as far as how we saw the business, how we understood the process, and how we valued ourselves. But I saw the business from a different angle and a different perspective than the way he saw it. And we understood that from the get go. This is the beauty. Some partnerships begin with an erroneous, a wrong perception of what the other party wants. And before you know it, you start drifting apart, or as a person or as a business, because you start going in a direction that you don't want and that you don't understand and that you didn't sign up for. We went into a very weird direction and a very unique position within our business, but we knew it from the get-go. I knew I wasn't going to get what I wanted. He knew he wasn't going to get what he wanted, but we built something great, and it worked for many years. So yeah, having once you make that decision to partner or to marry someone, you have to know that you're gonna give it 100%. And with family is either all or nothing. I mean, some family, I hear horror stories about family partnerships, and thankfully in our case it was wonderful. We in 20 years we never had a single argument, and we had up serious, ridiculous amounts of reasons to have problems in discussions, in perhaps argue and negotiate, and we never did. I mean, made millions, lost millions, good markets, bad markets, and we just sat down and figured it out and quickly and moved on. And I think that's very healthy to consider in every partnership. But it's hard. Doesn't it's almost like selecting an executive and hiring the right top position.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to. I'm gonna say that it doesn't happen right away. And if you have the wrong partnership, just be honest about it and try to figure out how to get out of it and start again. It happens. We all make mistakes, and it doesn't always happen the way we anticipate it.
Yeah, earlier I asked you if you thought that it was your family upbringing that contributed to your success, and now it's making me think more that that's the truth because your brother, came out of that same environment, and so something in him as well came from that family upbringing. The nurture part of him was able to also succeed in business and create another person who had the empathy and the respect for you and the love to be able to operate together. And when there was disagreements, which inevitably they're gonna be, where it didn't become combative, and neither did you. So yeah, I mean
Yeah,
that's great.
no, absolutely. It was the opposite. And you're right. I attribute it to different things. We are not competitive. We are team players in one respect. We never saw each other as wanting to be better than the other or have more than the other. We have enough of an age difference. It's not a 1 or 2 or 3 year where we were, playing the same sports. We have a 6 year difference, which is not enormous, but it was more of the big brother, little brother, and I saw him as my big brother in some things because he's a very wise, very spiritual, deep thinker, and I always learned from him since he was a little kid, and I always respect that. So when you have that mutual respect, and also the fact that we grew up spending a lot of time alone, between our parents traveling so much, we always looked out for each other. So I agree with you. It's
Mm.
got a lot to do. I see so many examples where siblings spend more time arguing and fighting and over disputes than anything else. In our case, we are more worried about the other one doing well than ourselves, and it's rare. But I think it's I wish more people would be able to exercise that type of relationship and utilize the trust that we have within our families.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's probably a lot of people out there very envious of you in being able to have that close of a relationship with your brother and being able to have all those experiences together. My brother and I were both in the same unit in the military. We were 2 years apart, but I joined the military first, and then he joined, and we were in the same unit because we're both here in Colorado, and we got deployed several times, but we were always together. So,
Yeah.
I remember one time one of our majors said, "God, I wish we could have a whole uh, flight of Juarez's, right?" Because we were like, too young, just like outgoing go-getters, just, following directions. And it was just so cool to do that with him. And we've got so many experiences, and it only brought us closer together. So
Yeah,
it's really
it
cool.
is amazing when you have a good relationship, and it's a blessing because it's not always that way.
Yeah.
Incidentally, I do have an older sister, a couple of years older,
Hmm.
which is we're also as close, but she has completely different interests. She's not a businesswoman. She's like our old sister slash mom. She
Right.
she did, you know, we worked together for a little bit, but she's more into other things.
That's okay
So
too, right? Everybody's got
yeah,
their
she's
own
the
thing.
one that coordinates the family events and all that. We all have one of those in the family.
Right. That's amazing. Well, congratulations on that. Let's switch gears a little bit. So again, you've done a lot of different things, and one of the things that you do is you write books. and you pour your experiences and your knowledge into these books to share with others. And your first book was focused on, the structure and finance of maybe like traditional real estate, right? Finished products. And
The business of home building. Yes, yes.
right, in the business of home building. And very good. And some time along your journey, you switched gears and you went the opposite direction, right? To raw land. And so your upcoming book, Dirt Rich, centers on, raw, undeveloped land. Um,
Yeah.
and both of them you can love, right? But what's the fundamental difference, do you think? And the difference of
Very
like
late.
falling in love with pure potential and the
Yes.
uncertainty of vacant land, and the opposite, which is, just kind of taking what's there and figuring out where it fits best.
Yeah, yeah. One is more tangible. Building homes is a very specific. Like as you said, there's less. Although there's a lot of imagination and a lot of fantasy and romanticism about building beautiful homes. Uh, Raw land provides endless levels of creativity and imagination. And so let me back up a minute. The business of home building, by the way, when I wrote this book, uh, I really wanted to do this for myself. I needed to unload all of these years um, where I was bottled up, information that I just needed to express the journey, the pros and cons, and the systems, and everything that occurred all of those years from the business standpoint, from the perspective of the business side of not only home building, but the construction industry. I didn't want to write about how to build. I felt like there was enough information, technical information about everything: design, decor, remodeling, construction, technicalities, endless numbers. But there wasn't anything out there that taught and that helped people that were starting the business how to build the business that builds the homes. So that's the end of that story. And I think it's very helpful for anybody getting into real estate, whether it's brokers, agents, remodelers, contractors, because it talks about the full spectrum of building the business, even if you're buying a home, to understand the mentality of the people behind this business and what they have to go through. If you're trying to build your own home, if you're trying to hire a builder, this book has a bigger audience. And when I get around to it, because I didn't write it to sell books, it was just something I needed to do. But at some point, I'm going to try to explain to the audience, to the public, how interesting this book is and how applicable it is for so many subjects. Now, Dirt Rich has a humongous link to the first book, because Dirt Rich represents the heart and the soul of the construction business. When I began building with my brother, a good portion of my time was looking at property, selecting sites, looking at dirt, and looking at 100 of them to find one good one. Driving, looking, researching, putting offers, negotiating, understanding HOAs, understanding restrictions, understanding title commitments, understanding the possibilities, entitlements, all of this, and finding properties in transitional neighborhoods, envisioning what can that piece of property turn into. And that became more fascinating to me as more of a philosopher than a technician. It became a little more interesting to me than the process of building the home. And over the years, I did so much scouting and looking and appraising. I became almost the person that the banks and the appraisers themselves would come to me to ask for advice as to what something was worth. And I had a very special system to coming up with a right valuation for something based on numerous things that now are very popular. But I could look at a site, what was on it, the shape, the size, the dimensions, what's next to it, what's in front of it, what's 2 blocks away from it, if there's a fire hydrant, what kind of trees, what kind. I would immediately start processing, seeing if we remove this, if we paint that house across the street, because right now nobody's going to buy this unless they fix that. And I would clean up the area and turn a very undesirable property or block into something that someone wanted. And I worked on that for so many years that it just became second nature. And the part of the second nature became understanding. Together with my brother, he had an amazing vision as to where things were moving towards. And we could always find the next big thing, the next neighborhood, the next hot small pocket or submarket. And we started doing that quite well in an inner city. So I became enamored with the possibilities, with the flow of our cities. Why are things where they are? Who decided to put this type of business there, and industrial there, and parks there, and what is the right balance? What do people want? What do we expect? So many things that we take for granted while we drive around our city, and we don't understand that all of these things were thought of, were designed, were delivered to you by people like ourselves who make those decisions and make logical sense out of what to place on each block and why. And that's what all this city planning subject and entitlements in land development and start in land speculating. I talk a lot about the risks and what it is to really speculate and gamble on these things. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it became an obsession for me to learn more about this business.
Yeah, I've
And
noticed.
anyway, I can go on and on, but I know I can talk a lot.
No, well, that's
My
why we're here, right?
Yeah,
We're here
yeah,
to
no, no.
talk. But I've actually noticed a difference in the emergence of people's interest in land over the last, say, 5 years. And I don't know if something changed in that time period, but the main things that everyone wanted, the main niches were like wholesaling, fix and flip, buy and hold. Short-term rental was really hot for a while, and now it's co-living is like one of the things that people are interested in. But land popped its head up about 5 years ago, and people were starting to ask about land. Um,
Yeah.
did something happen? Did they change something in the way that people view land? Why do you think it became so popular?
Well, I think the obvious. The famous saying, they're not making more of it, but it became more clear to everyone.
Hmm.
I think there's been, uh, gosh, I wish we had hours to really talk about this, but um, I'm going to back up again. Not too many years ago, it is that we didn't have many billionaires out there. All right, so let me start with that. Billionaires in multinational corporations that have very deep pockets in cash reserves that they have nothing to, I mean, there's no more companies to buy or stocks to invest in. At some point, they're buying huge tracts of land. That is one big one. Added to social media, added to a lot of people educating the different sectors of the market. But little by little, there are less and less opportunities, because once those conglomerates and billionaires buy that land, they're in no hurry to get rid of it. So there are less. I've seen it over the last 3 decades, and some friends that were already in it for a couple of more. So I've studied the trends over the last 50 years, how limited the opportunities are getting and how much more competitive. People are beginning to realize that finding a good tract of land, we can find plenty, okay? There's a lot of land out there, but that makes sense, where you can build, that is clean, that the dimensions are right, that the possibilities are there, that these utilities, the access to utilities, that the price is right, that has a particular requirements in order to turn into something. And more people are getting involved. Cities are growing tremendously. That's another
Hmm.
one. There's more money out there than good opportunities. So a lot of people are fighting over the same deals and making land more not only more expensive but more desirable. And again, I could go on and on, but I'll say one more thing. When you do it right, when you do a little bit of research and understand what you're buying and where you're buying, the profit potential, it's exponentially higher than buying a commercial or a multifamily. I've done it all, from industrial, commercial, retail, single tenant properties. And for example, you buy a property where you can fit a small community of 20 homes, all right? And if those homes go up in value $30,000, just for a round number, in 3 years, because you had an upswing in the economy and pricing and so on and so forth, and then you own the property next door where you can put another 20 homes, all right? Very likely that increase in the $30,000 value, the land guy is the one that's going to get it and sell it for considerably more to the next builder. So now and if you use leverage, let's say that there was a small tenant or somebody just carrying the cost, or the cost was nominal, you could, 10x your money in some cases. You buy a property that's, I mean, you buy property that's a couple of hundred, you put, 25% down, the property doubles in price, and all of a sudden, with a $30,000 investment, you made a $200,000, $250,000. We did that at a bigger scale, where we use leverage, calculated leverage that carried itself. Cover land play with what they call it, where it's, a small tenant is just covering it, but before you know it, there's some movement in the activity, and with a little equity you put, if that I started buying properties in transitional neighborhoods when they were $1 a foot, $2 a foot. They're now $150 a foot.
Wow.
If you use some leverage, you can give yourself an idea of, a lot that we would buy for $20,000 is now probably $600,000. In some many days we talked about, man, we should have bought all these properties and not build on them. Just left them there and we would have made more money.
That's what I was going to ask you. For me, a lot of times I would think about land. It was, okay, there's a bunch of land that's out in the middle of nowhere. It's not close to anything. Maybe they only use it for farming or livestock or cattle or something like that, but it has a purpose. And I was thinking, man, that's such a long game, right? You're just waiting and waiting for the city to catch up with you. And now, like, the speculation is, okay, where is the growth going to happen? Which way is the city growing, and what land is in its, in the direction of where the growth is happening? Right. So you have to speculate on that and maybe do some predictions and some forecasting on where that growth is, and then buy the land that's going to eventually be gobbled up by the new homes they have to build out there eventually. Right.
Absolutely.
That sounds to me like a good strategy. Am I seeing it right?
Correct. That's what our specialty, inner city. Although inner cities continue to grow, the loops get bigger in some of the major metropolitan areas, but you're so right. My specialty is certainly not in the rural areas and the outskirts, but I've seen those turn into great investments, because now more people, again, you have to specialize, you have to know what you want, what is your goal, what are you trying to achieve, because if you understand the game and you do your research and you figure out what the exit strategy is, there are areas outside of town where people are now gearing more towards a farmhouse, now with more people working online, and you can build a community, buy X number of acres, figure out how to subdivide them and create a community. That's not such a long game. It is longer and it's more tedious, and you need a little more capital, and it has to be well located and well thought of. But for example, here in Texas, there's a lot of little towns where people are buying a second home. They want to get away, and there's more and more communities where you can do some of that. But back to the important part, our specialty is inner city, finding those opportunities, trying to envision where are things moving to, where what are some of the interesting pockets that we see with potential, and why. What is the logic, the location, the reasoning behind it? And that's what we've done in the past. Those are short term. And we've missed them. I mean, we bought properties in places where we thought it would take us 2 or 3 years before we saw activity, and it took 10 or 15. So yes, I'm not going to tell you it's easy and that it's always a successful venture. Sometimes you buy something and it took much longer than you anticipated. A strategy that I talk about a little bit, we used to call what we did saturation. You know, we would go into a transitional neighborhood, start buying. Now a lot of people do it. Start buying quietly without putting up our signs, because the moment we put our builder sign, everything else got expensive. So we wouldn't put our sign. We would buy a lot of properties around the neighborhood, around some neighborhood that was somewhat forgotten. Once we had enough, then we would build 1 or 2 homes. And now we would start making noise. Maybe we wouldn't make money on the first 2 or 3 homes, but then eventually on the second one and on the third one. And so you can build that trend if you have a plan. So there's multiple strategies, but you really have to take this as a very serious career and put some serious time and effort into it. It's not a quick way to make money.
No. And you need experience. You need deep pockets. You said leverage. So you have to have good credit and a track history of borrowing and paying it back and making the interest payments. And that's how you get there. And obviously reputation, right, is a huge part of that too. And but what you were talking about with the inner city made me think of something that's happening here locally. We've got the NFL team, the Denver Broncos, and they've got a stadium now, and they're going to build a new stadium. And they were scouting out all these locations all around the Denver metro area, all up and down the Front Range. And they decided they want to stay in Denver proper, so right within the city limits. And so they found like this old rail yard. It's called a Barnum rail yard or something like that. And is that kind of what you're talking about? So these are things that maybe had other functions 50, 100 years ago that maybe became obsolete, right? They're not doing as many train stuff now. So this thing was just sitting vacant. Or old buildings that are vacant and maybe need to be knocked down. Old, huge parking lots that just are overgrown with weeds and cracked that they just decided they didn't want to use. Are those the kinds of opportunities you're looking for?
There are 2 types. If you get to the point where you have enough resources, you can create that market exactly the way you describe it. You go into an area that's transitional, that's maybe a kind of industrial and not very attractive. Buy some property, start building some lofts and something that adheres or works with a neighborhood, and start making some noise and building some momentum. And little by little, you start increasing the number of people willing to move to those areas, and before you know it, you have a neighborhood. Yes, but I'll mention 2 other ones. The next one is to be a second tier builder. That's something else that we would do. We would follow the big guys. Where are the big guys buying a few acres? Because they build a different product. There's always a little room. There's always the crumbs, the leftovers. They're building a big subdivision here and there. Well, let's buy a few properties around there and build. They're going to invest a massive amount on marketing and creating traffic and infrastructure. Let's just piggyback off of those guys. We've done a little bit of that. Also in inner city areas, where all of a sudden they're redoing some bigger developments, and we just try to buy the small properties around it. And the third one is research. Just like you said, the stadium, for example, we bought, and now there's access to information. If you just go to your your trade centers and your different business organizations that know what's coming, who's coming, what factories, plants, corporate headquarters, who's building. There's ways to see replats and ways to see permits being processed. So you know who in the bigger leagues is executing these different projects, and then just go and try to buy a couple of pieces of land around there. And once those developments take off, you happen to be very close to where the action is. So research is another one. A lot of us just don't take the time to go and investigate what is going on in our city. So there are different ways to go about it, other than going blind, and just simply investing on something and hoping for the best. That's not necessarily the best strategy.
Right. So with your current ventures, do you allow people to invest alongside of you? Do you have a fund? Like, say someone is listening and they're like, man, I just don't know if I have, what it takes to go start my own, dirt start. But if Jose's got a project, I would invest with him. Is that an opportunity?
I hate to say that, no, that is not our business model. We're more on the other side, where we'll invest some money, and if there's a good opportunity. We are not a fund. We are not licensed either to just raise capital. We've worked with partnerships more than anything. We'll partner with someone else. But I tell the story that when we started, my brother and I, and we needed money, nobody would give us money, so we just started with our with the little capital we had, and we tightened our belt and built one, and then two, and then four, and then eight, and then started multiplying. Been very disciplined with our finances, and then by the time everybody threw money at us, we no longer needed it. We had more lines of credit so there was never a good time for us to raise capital. And yes, we've had partners but I've always felt that this is perhaps a weird part of my personality, but I've always felt very nervous managing other people's money. It puts me under pressure, because I don't make money on every deal, and I could not face someone and tell them, hey, I lost your money, or we lost a little bit of money here. And when I do my deals with my partners, with our capital, we know what the risk is, and we know that we can average them out. We're not going to win on every deal. It's a numbers game. This one, we took a bath. That one didn't work out. That one broke even, but we made a bunch of money. We made a killing on this, so más o menos, as they say, Right. And that's how I operate. But when you have other people's money, now you have somebody to report to. Yeah. Maybe one time, but eventually we've talked about doing more stable deals where for example, now we're starting to do a lot of build to rent. We're building homes, renting them, and then we convert them into a permanent deal and retain those properties. Perhaps that might be an opportunity, but I'm not going to get to that point until we have our model is although it's a interesting operation, is very compared to those REITs and funds. We're a very small company in comparison, or for a group of individuals is a lot, it's many millions, but for those funds is nothing, and we don't feel comfortable. Yeah. But yeah, hopefully one day we'll have something safe enough and interesting enough where for fun we'll buy already established and stabilized properties for a return.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate you being transparent about that, because a lot of people who come on my podcast are all looking for cash, right? And so I appreciate you being upfront about that.
If you wrote me a check right now I wouldn't know what to do with. It would make me nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we would have to do it. We would have to do it together. If someone, I'll also say, if someone says, "Hey, I have money and I have a business," opportunity. I would, here's what I would do. I would give him my honest advice whether the deal works.
Mm-hmm.
And if it does work, we might chip in. We might throw a little money in it
Oh,
and work together on it. That might be more of a, but just capturing capital is not what we do.
gotcha. That makes sense. Well, Jose, we're up against the hour here, and it flew by. We talked
Yeah.
about so many different things, but I think that we talked enough about the opportunities in investing in land that I think that a lot of the audience is going to want to dig deeper. And I think that your book is going to be a great way for them to kind of peel back the onion a bit and find more information about how to do that. Number one, how can people connect with you? And also, too, how can they find out about the book?
Well, they're on Amazon. Both books are on Amazon, and the third one is I'm wrapping up the first one, which I'm the most excited about. Um, I'm gradually not to change the subject, but I'm gradually just talking about broader subjects that are very interesting to me.
Hmm.
And the third book is more about entrepreneurship, which is a bigger passion of mine than real estate. Real estate is one area of what I love and enjoy, but the aspect of building businesses, of creating value, of understanding what this world of entrepreneurship is something that I love. And I wrote a book now by the name of the Quantum Entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Mind over matter, creating a reality, building things out of thin air, and I think it's my favorite one. Not that the other ones are.
Is it
Uh,
along the lines of like a Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich scenario?
it's not from an arrogant point of view of do what I say and you're gonna make a bunch of money.
Hmm.
It's quite the opposite. I talk about the reality of entrepreneurship,
Hmm.
eliminating the romanticism of going out there and assuming that owning a business is about freedom, fun, wealth, excitement, and building empires. Yes, you can get there eventually, but the beginnings are far from it, and they're quite the opposite. And I talk about every aspect, every segment, the sequence of events that I consider can improve your probabilities of doing well in the business world. The choices, the lifestyle, the setbacks, how to approach them, how to prepare yourself, how to go in knowing what to expect rather than just running into a brick wall and realizing that you don't know where to go from there. So I think this is going to be extremely, extremely helpful for anyone that wants to own a business, start a business, or build one. Because I really, really talk about the reality of what this life choice represents, where it can lead, and what are many of the things that I did wrong that I could have improved or done better from the beginning in each one of the exercises that I implemented. Um, but yeah, those books are the two now are on Amazon. JoseBerlanga.com is my website, and hopefully we'll be doing a lot more videos and fun stuff, with recommendations and advice for people in the real estate industry and young entrepreneurs.
That sounds amazing. When does that come out? Do you have like a projection when it's going to be available?
The third book, it's probably the end of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, you can tell that I'm obsessive compulsive. I'll tell you real. I know we're running out of time, but many of us humans have this ability to put things off. To say the famous statement, one day I'm going to do this.
Right.
One day I'm going to learn a language. One day I'm going to learn how to play this or do the sport or get in shape. And I kept saying that one day I'm going to write a book. And one day I'm going to start mentoring and training and teaching and passing on a lot of this information and doing some of the things that I love doing, not as a career, but more as a hobby. But the moment I start, the lesson here, the point I'm getting to is the moment you get to it and you start practicing it and you get better at it, it becomes a habit. The moment I said, all right, it's time to start writing, it's time to start organizing my thoughts in a coherent manner and in structure. The moment I started doing that, I can't stop. I'm already right now starting the fourth book. So
Wow.
now I find every quiet moment that I have, because by the way, doing this, the biggest challenge is that I have a family, I have a wife and children that I love hanging out with in a business. So the challenge is to find the focus to do it. If that's the only thing I was doing,
Right.
I'd probably write a book every month because I have a very, very busy mind. But I'm doing it kind of on my spare time here and there. And I think a lot of people are like that, that once they get into it and decide to start something, it starts becoming a habit and it gets easier. So that's where I'm at now.
Well, maybe we'll have to have you back after you finish the book and it's out, it's available, and we can talk about some of the concepts and some of the cool things that you're going to put in there, and we can, help you, promote it. But man, you guys go check out his current books. And I must have made a mistake too, because I thought that the Dirt Rich was coming out this year. It's the third one. Dirt Rich is already available, right?
Yes, it's just coming out as we speak. I know that they're having some glitches there on Amazon trying to
So it is
figure out the
fairly
algorithm
new.
and all that. And there are, by the way, when I had already picked that title, there are other books called Dirt Rich. So they're, they all have to do with land and
Yeah.
uh, but I realize that there are multiple titles, multiple books with the same name. I think there's several. There are some names that are just popular,
Oh yeah,
and this
it's a great term, right? Dirt rich, and there's only so many words in the English language anyway. So that's why
yeah
you got the words after, dirt rich, right? The explore the world of land, invest in development. That's what makes it unique. And
yeah
obviously, your name's going to be there, Jose Berlanga, author, right? So that's the key there. So you guys, we're going to put the links in the show notes so you can go directly to Amazon and buy the books, learn from Jose's expansive experience. And it was just such a pleasure to talk to you, Jose. And thank you for spending the time with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Benson. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And you guys, thanks for listening to this edition of the REI Hacker podcast. Keep an eye out for amazing guests like Jose in the future. We talk about business and entrepreneurship and real estate and all things that are out there to help you create wealth and create a legacy for your family and your future. So take care, and we'll see you next time.